Welcome to my live. How is everyone doing today? Did you have a good week? I hope you did. I see a lot of people in the live. Come and say hi. Say hi to me in the chat. Hello, everyone. Let me give you a little wave here. Hi, Diane. How are you? Good to see you. Waiting for the rest of our buddies. I saw Constant left a comment today on one of my videos. I so miss the old gang, you know. Nor, I don't know where you are. I love you. I miss you. I hope you're doing well. Ruth, I hope you're doing well. Mary, I've seen Mary has stepped in now and then. Joseph, there's a lot more. D Sec has been a faithful supporter over on Patreon. I haven't seen her here on the live. I know that some people can't make it because of the time, but know that my thoughts are with you. I'm thinking about you. I hope you're doing well. I miss you. I love you. And really, how so, Diane? Oh my gosh, we're burning up here in South Florida. Well, actually, I'm not in South Florida, Central Florida. It's just so hot. Hi, Sherry. Hi, Sherry. How are you? It's like they said we have, a weather pattern coming from the Atlantic, and then a wet weather pattern coming in from the Gulf Coast, and we're trapped in the middle, and it's just like it's like a hothouse. Hi, Christina. Yes, Christina, you're another one that I haven't seen in a while and have missed you. How are you doing, love? What? I'm envious. Low 60s? Oh my gosh. There's so much I will do. Low 60s. That reminds me of California weather. We would get in the 60s in the evenings and at night and in the mornings. So at least you could open your window and let cool air in. I can't open my windows. I have to keep it shut so the AC keeps circulating. And even with the AC, it's not enough. See, I have my fan on. Rashida soon comes in and said, "Didn't I tell you to get a quieter fan on QVC?" Oh my gosh. We are not getting the rain, Sherry. I wish we were getting the rain because it rained just a little bit. Um, it like rained for like 5 minutes and it wasn't really heavy rain. That's all the rain we had this week. And after the rain, it was the heat, went away. It was such a nice, comfortable temperature. So I would so appreciate the rain. But it's hot, it's humid, and it's not raining, and that's not fair. If it's going to be humid, at least rain and cool the place down a little bit. I'm glad you're doing good, Christina. We've missed you. I Let me pull up because I don't remember what episode we are on, but I wanted to chat with you guys today about because there's been a lot of news, the Walking Dead news that's been filtering around the internet. Because one, there was a convention where a lot of the past Walking Dead cast showed up. It was the panel that I saw in France. It was Lauren Cohan, it was Chandler, it was the young lady that plays Beth, it was Laurie Holden, Andrea, and who else was on their panel? I think that was it. Yeah, Maggie, Andrea, Beth, Chandler, Carl. Yeah, I think that was it for their panel. And then there was another panel. I did not watch that panel, but I think it included, I know I did see Abraham, and I think Eugene, and I don't remember if Tara was a part of it, but there was a bunch of, secondary characters for The Walking Dead in France. And um, the panel that I watched, I've posted one of the videos here on YouTube. I have the Chandler video I posted on Patreon. I'll post that soon. Um, if not this weekend, early next week. But I think I might put it up this weekend. And I posted, yeah, I also posted news that I saw on Twitter that Denai will be in London in August. She will be doing a sci-fi convention, I think, August 22nd and August 23rd. As you know, Denai doesn't do a lot of conventions. Her last convention was in 2018. And yeah, so the fact that she's doing this in London is very interesting. A lot of Rishon fans, because they were the ones I got the news from off of Twitter. Remember, I told you I used to read these Rishon fans' tweets, and I hadn't seen them on my algorithm in a long time. I don't post on Twitter, but I sometimes read it to get the news and, to keep up to date with what's going on. And I hadn't seen any Rishon things, which I used to get. So I went searching, and a whole bunch popped up. And yeah, so they put the news out that Denai would be in London. And of course, they're very happy because anytime Denai's in London, usually she catches up with Andy. But I think they're also hoping that, there's some rumblings of, maybe like how when Andy and Denai and Scott were meeting and concocting the ones who live, and we knew nothing about that. I think they're hoping there's that something like that is going on. So, but she'll be in London, but the reason I think she's doing a convention, which she doesn't really do, it's I think it's called fantasy and sci-fi. And I think the reason she's doing it is because she has a lot of projects coming out this year. She has a Netflix movie with Denzel Washington, Robert Pattinson, and so she stars in that movie with them. It's called Here Comes the Flood, and I think that's going to be huge on Netflix. I wish it was a theatrical release, but it's going to be huge on Netflix. So Here Comes the Flood is coming out, and then she has the Matchbox with John Cena, and that one is coming out in on Apple. And that's, yeah, Matchbox. And then there's something else, and I can't remember what it is. Do you guys remember? Hi, Rashida. Hi, Rashida. Nice to see you. I'm glad you were able to make it. Diane says the one I saw you saw the ones, okay, that I named, plus the actors who played Morgan. Okay, so it was Morgan. So remember, I was telling you there was a second of the Walking Dead panel in France that I didn't watch that panel, but Diane said it was Morgan, Dwight, Tara. So I didn't notice. I did see Tara, Rosita, Jadis. I didn't know she was in it. Jadis and several other side characters. Okay, because that panel was full. So I think I saw Abraham too. I think I saw Abraham. So that panel I didn't watch, but yeah. So the things about the panel that I did watch, I posted a short from that panel, and we'll discuss that. And then I posted on Patreon, and I another uh, interesting tidbit from that panel. That video I will be releasing tomorrow on this channel. On Yeah, I think so. I think I set it for 12 noon tomorrow. So QVC. I still haven't checked out QVC, Rashida, but I think I have to one day to get a fan, a quiet fan. So, yeah, so we will discuss that. And yeah, so Denai has hers coming out on in August because she has some projects to promote, and I think she wants to get back into connecting with the fans, and you know, getting to meet the fans at conventions is a nice way to get back into the PR mode. So, yes, let's discuss that statement by Lauren, which I posted here as a short, where she again, well, I can't say, uh, it's not fair to say she keeps bringing it up because she was asked by a fan, if what does she wish was, if there's a storyline or something that could be done different for her character. And she said she prefers the comics. She said she preferred the comics. She thinks it was a great narrative. And we all know it's not surprising she would say that, because she says, as she pointed out, for her, at least for her character Andrea had a different storyline than she had in the TV show. And in the comics, as we all know, she actually was with Dale, and then after Dale died, she actually harassed Rick. She went after Rick. Rick kept rejecting her because Rick was with, in the comics, he was with the widow, Jesse. Jesse. I don't remember if Rick had met her husband. I doubt it. She was just a widow, but she was very weak and clingy, like in the show, weak and clingy. And Jesse had died, and Rick just, wanted to be. And Andrea harassed him, and just forced herself on him. And it's so funny to when you listen to a lot of the Walking Dead fanboys. They were always about, oh yes, Rick and Andrea were the best couple. They were, their story was so awesome. And I was like, really? They didn't come about, Rick didn't really want to be with Andrea. And it's the same. Carol in the comics forced herself on Rick. Rick was like, heck no, you know? And he said heck no to Andrea too, but she kept forcing herself. And then I think Robert Kirkman was afraid, because he wrote Rick and Michonne as soulmates, and he was afraid to put them together. So he went ahead and put Rick and Andrea together, and then forced the narrative of soulmates, and the comic wasn't interesting to me, in the sense that it was very, a lot of the dialogue was very immature. It was very misogynist. And what they did to Michonne in the comics and how they wrote her, it was It was awful. Her friendship was Rick was the best thing in the comics. Her friendship with Rick and her friendship with Carl. And yeah. So Andrea lived, and Rick and Andrea became a couple, and she was in the comics for a very, very, very long time. She lived much longer in the comics than she did in the show, and she was paired with Rick. And I've heard before that the when she yes, Rashida, Robert Kirkman chickened out. Well, it, mm, but that's what you're in business for. You're in business for money. You're not in the business to just do it, right? It takes, so I can't fault him for that, but I don't think that's the reason he did it, because, it would have made money anyway. But, you know, that wasn't the reason he didn't go through with it. Let's just say that. And well, in the prior interview, she did say that she signed on for 8 years, and that she and Rick were supposed to get together. And she said she thinks, at another interview, she did say she and Rick would have been hot together, which I'm like, what? They had no chemistry. So, it's her opinion, and, opinions are subjective. But Andrea in the show and Rick had no chemistry. And two, oh my gosh, can you imagine Rick going for so sloppy seconds, in the terms of, she was with all his enemies. She was with uh, Shane. She was with Rick. Would not go with any woman who was with Shane after Laurie. No way, no how. So she was with Shane. She was with the governor. There is no way Rick would be with Andrea. So it would be an insult. It Rick would not be the man he is, the man we love. He would not be that alpha male if he went with Andrea, if he was paired with Andrea. And Andrew Lincoln knows that, and Andrew Lincoln did not want that pairing. Andrew made up his mind from the get go. From Michonne came into the show, from Rick and Michonne had their first scenes. As we all know, Danai told us, Andy wrote that letter to her saying, apologizing to his leading lady. He called her his leading lady. So that was decided right then and there by Andy. So I don't know. And then she said she did the 8-year contract, and she and Rick were supposed to get together. That was the promise. And then Frank Darabont, the creator of the TV show The Walking Dead, made it clear. He did an interview with slash.com, and he said, and it was a very extensive interview. You can guys could go and look it up, slash.com. And he said that was never the plan. The plan was to have a May-December romance between Dale and Andrea that would turn into a real marriage. And to me, he had that long-term goals. Remember, Dale left the show early because Frank Darabont was fired. And Dale, Andrea, and Carol, the actors that portrayed those characters, were brought on by Frank Darabont because they were friends with him. They worked with him prior on his, on other projects. So the actor that played Dale was very upset, and he asked to be written off the show. And then when they did that, he changed his mind, but it was too late, you know. And I think it was an emotional decision, a hasty decision, because you don't get a as an actor, you don't get a great show like The Walking Dead, and they knew by season 2 that this show was, on fire. This show was hitting on all cylinders. So he regretted um, uh, asking to be taken off the show. But the plan was by Frank Darabont from his own mouth that it would be Dale and Andrea. And as we saw in the show how obsessed Dale was with Andrea. And something I didn't know when I was searching for the interviews, the past interviews, where Laurie had said that she had signed an 8-year contract and she and Rick were supposed to be together. And I was looking for that slasher.com interview. When I went down a rabbit hole and I found Google brought up some comments from Reddit. I don't read Reddit. I forgot to bring my water. Oh my gosh. I don't read Reddit, but I just read it there on Google, and it all had all these comments on that statement that was brought up by Andrea that she was supposed to be with Rick and blah blah blah. And one of the Redditors said that when she was cast, when she appeared in the show, Andrea, the actress, was in her early 40s. I didn't know that. And because the character of Andrea was supposed to be in her 20s. Andrea is very, there was an age difference between Rick and um, Andrea in the comics. So Rick was probably in his 30s. I don't know, maybe, early 40s, but in, that age range, late 30s. And Andrea was in her 20s. So the person made an interesting point that Andrea, the casting didn't seem right for Andrea, because Andrea is supposed to be much younger, and they wrote her that way. So they cast her with a more mature actress, and they don't. And the person said they didn't mind that they cast her with a mature actress, but they wish they changed the age of the. They didn't change the I don't know if they changed the age of the character, because she was supposed to be in her early 20s, but the actress was early 40s. And they wished they had, since they went with that, and it would make Dale and Andrea seem more compatible than, if it was a 20-year-old versus Dale, that would be like huge age difference. She would be, Andrea would be like his granddaughter. But they didn't mind that they casted an actress in her early 40s, but they said it seemed like they didn't change the writing for to match the age of the actress. They kept the writing for the age of the character, and that was why, to them, the poster said it seemed that that's why there was such an incongruity with the character, that she came across very, very immature, very immature, very naive, and very that arrogance, that a lack of experience. Usually people who have lack experience but think they know everything. When you're in your 20s, you think you know everything, and you don't know anything, but you walk around with all this confidence, like, and that was Andrea. Brash, you know arrogant, and all these. The poster had some great adjectives, and the comments, the ladies that commented on Patreon, great, great, great adjectives to describe Andrea. And that there was that incongruity. Why can't I speak? I think I need water. So uh, Rashida said Rick was 38, Andrea was 25 in the comics. Big age difference. So, yeah. So they were, that's why I said I didn't buy them as compatible. It just, in the comics, they weren't, to me, they didn't seem like a good match, and they weren't a good match. I didn't enjoy Rick and Andrea's relationship. I found it annoying in the comics. I was like, oh my gosh, he and Michonne are so, they're kismet. They match and they loved each other. And I was like, what is Robert Kirkman doing? But I wasn't shocked he didn't follow through with Rick and Michonne, because not everyone, you know, has that openness to people being people. Some every not everyone sees a person, color and race first. And instead of just seeing people as human beings. So I wasn't surprised he didn't go there. But I was disappointed, because all signs pointed to Rick loving Michonne and Michonne loving Rick, and they were so good to each other and for each other. And for him to pair Rick with this young girl who was just forcing herself on him because she no longer had her partner, it came off sleazy and forced. How the comic Andrea fans love to claim Rick and Michonne are forced in the show, when the opposite is true. And the irony of it is that Andrea and Rick were forced in the comics. She literally threw herself on him, and he kept rejecting her. I mean, seriously rejecting her. And that's forcing a couple together. And he did it because I obviously he chickened out. He didn't, it's his comic, his book, his characters. So he didn't want to go there, because maybe he doesn't believe in interracial relationships. I don't know, but he didn't do that for in the comics. And he did say that he thought about he wanted, I don't think wanted is the word, but that's how he wrote it. The characters organically were should have been put together. And it's obvious that the thought was there, because as a writer, sometimes your characters take over. I know, as a writer, my characters take over, especially if I'm writing a story, and the characters organically seem like they're going in a certain direction. I usually just go with the characters, and it seemed that's where the characters were going. And I don't know his personal beliefs, but he chose not to, and he forced Rick and Andrea together. So yeah, the irony of those same fans beating the drum that Rick and Michonne are forced in the show. Rick and Michonne were the slow build in the show, and Rick and Michonne were the obvious choice in the comics, and they didn't go with them in the comics. But thankfully, they went with them in the show. And the original showrunner, the creator of the TV show, which is an adaptation from the comics, Frank Darabont, said he never intended Andrea and Rick. And in the show, organically, they would not fit together. They would not fit together. Rick and Andrea were two different people, and just there was no compatibility there. It he And she was, she was just, there's nothing, she was just so impetuous and naive and brash and arrogant and entitled, and everything Rick is not, and everything Rick does not admire. So there's just nothing there, and she was with Rick's enemies. you know Rick would not go for a woman like that. Um so there was nothing there was nothing in the comics, but he did it anyway. But there was nothing in the show. He wanted Andrea and Dale together. And the second showrunner, Glenn Mazzara, uh did not like Andrea. It was so obvious. And I think he didn't like Andrea because organically who Andrea was annoying. I don't think it was anything against the actress. I don't know, but as I said, Frank Darabont, the actor that plays Dale, the actor that name plays Andrea, were very close to Frank, the showrunner, and they were not happy he was let go. So I don't know what the interpersonal relationships were on the show at that time. There was a lot of stories, but as the character was written, and I think the character, a lot of people is like, oh, that's not Andrea and she would not behave. But how the character was in season one and season two and season three, I think the character fit. I don't think there was any big deviation. She was just, as some people said, that the writing didn't change for the character, but the castings, that's there were, maybe if the character, the actor portraying the character fit the age of the character, maybe we would feel more sorry, we would have more pity for her, because we know that's how 20 something year olds act. But in the show, we didn't know she was supposed to be in her 20s. She was written that way, but coming from a more mature woman, it came off very annoying and arrogant and entitled and brash and naive, and just it wasn't there wasn't empathy, because at that point of someone in there, I used to think the character was in her 30s. Someone in her 30s should know a little better. you know so let me see what you guys say, because I'm just going on and on. Let's see. Sherry said sour grapes. Sorry, that character was pitiful. Sherry says, I kind of enjoyed Andrew in season one and two, but by season three, no way, man. I found Andrew annoying from beginning, from season one. When she came and cocked that gun to Rick, and he was like, oh, you just I was like, who is this? I was like, calm down, lady. I'm like, why is she so extra? She just came across very just cocky. I don't know. I had empathy for her when her sister died, but she had that. Diane described her perfectly. I'm going to look for the words that Diane used in Patreon. Let me see. Because those adjectives were perfect. Oh no, that's a different post. I'm looking at the wrong post. I posted so many things in the last couple of days. Okay, is this it? No, that's a different one. Okay. The words that Diane used was, Diane, do you remember the words you used? I'm looking it up and I can't find it. Diane says here, I now question that statement because I had read an article that says there's no such thing as an 8-year contract. Can you verify if that's true? Yeah, we one of the statements on Reddit said that there's no 8-year contract. Well, I don't know. Because I've never signed an 8-year contract, but and I don't know if they exist, but I do know that the producers would do long-term contracts to try to hold on to the character, whether they only intend for the character to be in just a couple shows, one season, but they did it just in case the show took off and then the actors became big, whether from that show or another show, and they need the character in the long term. So it was for the producers, it's not for the actors. They did it to have, like, the upper hand so that they could lock the actor in case they need the actor. So it wasn't a guarantee to say, yeah, we definitely, this contract means we have to keep you for 8 seasons or whatever. No. Rashida said Andrea in season 1 was understandable, but by seasons 2 and 3, I could not stand her. Even her death was annoying. That's what one of the posters said. And then again, Rashida said Rick was 38 and Andrea was 25. Sherry said that makes so much sense now. I didn't like how Andrea's character was written kind of like a clueless person. Yep. Rashida says on the TV show, Rick was Andrew Lincoln's age, 37, and Andrea was between 37 and Laurie, the actress, was 41. That is why people didn't like her. The script was for a younger person and it sounded ridiculous. Okay. So when I looked it up, it says she started the show at 40. So she was older than Andrew Lincoln, too. And yet, Andrew is supposed to be much younger than Rick. And then, yeah, and Michonne is younger than Rick, but there wasn't that, at least I don't think there was a huge age difference in the comics. Let me see. How old were Rick and Michonne when they met in the comics? In the Walking Dead comic. Rick Grimes was approximately 34 to 36 years old, and Michonne was early to mid 20s. So Michonne was around the same age as Andrea. But Michonne went through some really, really dark stuff in the comic. And she had a daughter. So I don't think she was probably mid to mid 20s, but she went through some really dark traumatic stuff. So she was like older in her the way she carried herself. She seemed on the same level as Rick versus Andrea, who seemed, she came across very immature in its sense that, throwing herself at Rick the way she did. In the comics, who? Angie, you mean Andrea Rashida hooked up with Spencer in Alexandria. Sherry said, I wonder if Andrew Lincoln ever read the comic version of The Walking Dead. Does anyone know? That I don't know, Sherry. Diane says he never even watched the episodes. I doubt he read the comics. But I do know he didn't watch the show because he said he didn't like to see himself. He doesn't watch himself on screen, but he did do it, he said, after and to prepare for the ones who live. And he did watch himself with the ones who live because he was a producer. It was his show. So, but I don't know. I don't recall him ever mentioning if he read the comics or not. Ah, that makes sense, Sherry. He's Andrew wanted his acting of Rick to be totally organic. So knowing the story ahead wouldn't help him to experience these things for the first time. So that makes sense. Diane said it right. I heard he always stayed in character. Yeah, he was a method actor. Sherry said, yes, Andrea character so annoying. My goodness. Rick and Andrea, heck no. Rashida says, plus Andrea was a civil rights lawyer that was infuriating to see her in season 2 and 3. She didn't come across as a civil rights lawyer. She seemed so clueless as Sherry described her. I don't know. That was, and she wasn't a civil rights lawyer in the comics. Well, let me see. Michonne was the lawyer. Let me see. What was Andrea's profession in the comics? See, they aged her up. They aged Andrea up in the show, but didn't age up the writing. That's what didn't make any sense. They didn't age up the writing for the character. They wrote her as a naive early 20s girl. Um, See, before the apocalypse, and this is in the comics, before the apocalypse, Andrea worked as a clerk at a law firm in the original Walking Dead comics. So she wasn't even a lawyer. She was just a clerk. So the fact to make her a civil rights lawyer made no sense. She didn't seem to be very knowledgeable. She didn't seem to she couldn't negotiate, she couldn't reason, well. And she just didn't come, and she was written like a dumb, you know, arrogant someone just coming out of her teenage years. So that would not be the type of someone who's a civil rights lawyer would have some kind of maturity to them, and Andrea didn't have exhibit that type of maturity. So it just the characterization. So some people say it's the casting, but the characterization and the casting have to match, right? It's just so it's one or the other. So if you're going to cast this actress, change the characterization. Okay, remember I told you guys I wanted Denai as the lead in a movie that I'd written, and a movie that a film I wanted developed a few years ago. Well, guess what? I and it's an adaptation of a novel, but I the in the novel the character is younger than the actress, much younger than the actress. And so I had to change the characterization of the character so that it would fit the actress. The actress had some characteristics of the character. That's why I wrote the film. I wrote the script with Denai in mind. But because the part that I wanted her to play, even though there were some characteristics that fit the character, Denai was, more older, was older than a character and would bring more maturity and experience. So I had to find a way to match the character more to fit with the actress. I had to mature up the character. So I changed the situation of the character. Changed the age, and I matured up the character and her situation. That was, it seemed that was not done with The Walking Dead. They wanted that specific actress because, her friend was the showrunner. So he wanted, this is someone he worked with, and he wanted her. He worked with before, and he believed she could play that role. But it doesn't seem they matured. Andrew is a young 25-year-old, very brash, and behave like other 25 years old, know it all and doesn't know squat. But you're casting a much mature actress for a very immature role. And so what is it? You got to bring up, you can't change the actor's who the actor is. The actor is the actor. So, and actors can play younger and actors can play older, but the actor is way more it has around 20 decades on the character. So it just wouldn't be believable. So you have to change up the writing for the character to more fit with the actor. And that's where a lot of the discrepancies came from. And people are like, why is this character so annoying? Something isn't right. And that I couldn't figure it out too. The descriptions that the posters on Reddit, and what Sherry, Rashida, and Diane, and in Patreon, the adjectives, I wish I could find it, because it would explain exactly what was going on with the writing and the character, why everything just seemed so off. Hey, Constant says popping in should be in. Oh, Constant said, Andy said he had read some of the comics in the beginning of the show. Okay, thank you for that, Constant. So there you have it. I wish I could find it, the description. Yeah, and Rashida said, oh no, it wasn't Rashida. Sherry on Patreon said she had an annoying sense. The character and in the TV show, Andrea, had an annoying sense of superiority with an air of arrogance. Perfect description of Andrea. She couldn't read people to save her life. You, as a civil rights lawyer, that is one of the skills you should have. And that's one of the skills that Rick had, and it's one of the skills that Michonne had. They could read people. Andrea couldn't. She would posture that she could read people. She acted like she could, but she couldn't read anyone. Right? Everyone the governor easily manipulated her. She couldn't see the forest for the trees. Michonne saw through him right away. Andrea didn't, right? So that would not be a good quality in a lawyer, to not be able to decipher if a person is telling the truth or not. I'm reading some of the replies on Patreon. I'm trying to look for the adjectives used there, because it was in the video I put up that I can't find. Diane said she was more than 10 years older than her sister, so she would have had to be in her 30s in season 1. That's what I thought, Diane. But so they aged up the character in the show, but wrote her as the 20 something year old. That she didn't come off like a 30 something year. She did not come off as a mature woman. So I don't know what the issue was, but something was off. Well, anyway, so that was interesting. So Frank Darabont said he never intended Andrea and Rick to be together at all. And it was Dale and Andrea. And Andrea were a couple in the comics. But from what Frank Darabont said, it seemed like that would be her pairing for the show. And remember, because Frank wasn't going to kill off Dale. Dale was, the actor that played Dale was his friend. So he was going to keep Dale around. Then the second showrunner, okay, that's where I was Glenn Mazzara. And he's the one that got rid of Andrea. And he said that the story, Laurie, the actress, said that Glenn Mazzara had told her the story was that she was supposed to come in and save, riding on a horse and save Woodbury. That Andrea wasn't going to be killed. She would save Woodbury from the governor, and she would become a hero. So how they were saying it is like she would be like a big deal. She would be like how, Rick, the leader of a group. She would be the leader of a community. And I don't know how that would have gone, how that story would have gone, where, how that would look. But that wasn't in the comics either, so I don't know. She said he changed his mind. He called her was it the night before she shot her death scene? And she was in shock. She said she felt like she was shot. She felt she was like, and everyone on set was upset and crying. So when they were crying over her death scene, that was real tears, because they had just found out that she was, let go from the show. And she said she had bought a house. It's just like Jessie, the actress that plays Jessie, the Alexandra, I can't remember her last name. She was going to buy a house. And so Laurie says she was in the process of buying her house. And, because she's looking forward to being on this show long term. But Glenn Mazzara said no, and he killed Andrea off. He said he said he couldn't write it, and she was let go from the show. So I know she was upset about that in the past. As she said, she was supposed to be. But again, if the original showrunner said no, his plan was never for Laurie. His plan was never for Andrea and Rick. The second showrunner said no, and there's gonna be no Andrea and Rick. And as a matter of fact, I heard stories back then. The second showrunner, Glenn Mazzara, they said he would change the scripts and they would get the scripts late. So its production was like or not season 2, season 3. Production was pretty difficult during season 3 because it was very chaotic. As a matter of fact, Glenn Mazzara was one of those that preferred Shane over Rick. He wanted Rick to lead the show, but he wanted Shane to lead the show. That's the stories I used to hear when the show was going on. And we would get news about what was going on behind the scenes. So It was a pretty intense season. And uh, yeah, it was a pretty intense season three. And he had his own ideas. He really liked Shane. And so then he was let go from the show, and Gimple was made showrunner. And Gimple intended Rick for Michonne. So how, where, and how she would get the only reason she would think that she would be with Rick was because of the comics, because her bosses never. So, I used to hear stories. I heard that she said, but I cannot say that she said it, but I heard that, because I would have to go back and see. I would have to see the interview or read what she said. But she said people used to attribute to her saying she was promised Rick and Michonne. And I'm like, that cannot be true, because how are you going to promise something that was never intended? The she was promised Rick and Andrea. Sorry, I said Rick and Michonne. She was promised Rick and Andrea. That cannot be true. So I don't know if she said that or people used what she said, that she signed an 8-year contract and Rick and Andrea would be together, and they're saying, oh, she said she was promised. But as I said, that statement, whether someone made it up or they're attributing it to her or she did say that statement could never be true, because the showrunner never intended for Rick and Andrea. The creator and showrunner of the TV show never intended for Rick and Andrea. The second season showrunner never intended for Rick and Andrea. And the third showrunner, Scott Gimple, was already planting the seeds for, in the episodes that he wrote, he was already planting the seeds for Rick and Michonne. So whether Andrea lived or didn't live, none of the showrunners intended Andrea for Rick. None. And then the piece de resistance, the actors are not in charge, right? The writers, the producers, the director, but the writer says what goes. The foundation, it goes back to the writing. And we know that. But then when you have such a great lead for the show, a leader, a show where the show hinges on the protagonist, and the protagonist happens to be a great leader, a great actor, and it's turning out to be his show, right? So, and he's very well regarded, and he doesn't have the final say, but he has a say. It's just like if you're doing a movie with a Denzel Washington. If you're doing a movie with a say Leonardo DiCaprio, you're doing a movie with who are the top ladies in movies now. They have a say. Like a Meryl Streep, a Viola Davis. They have a say. They may not have the final say, but they have a say. The producer and the director will listen. If the actor comes to them and say, listen, I don't think my character would do that. It depends on the type of sets, and it depends on the producers. They say, listen, and said, you know what? I agree with you, but some, maybe the writer or director, whatever, may be arrogant and said, oh, whatever, it's my story. I don't care what the actors say. But Andrew Lincoln was a leader on the set, and he wanted his character with Michonne. So again, if Andrea had lived, how would that look? Because she would not get the she would not get the Rick and Andrea pairing of the comics, because the showrunners were against it. And in this case, the showrunners were also writers. You know, the showrunners, they came up with the story for the Bible for the season. And some of them wrote episodes for the show, but they said this is the storyline for the season, and the writers have to fit with that. So the showrunners were had no intentions for Rick and Andrea, and the actor who happened to be the lead of the show, the main protagonist, had no desire or intentions for his character to be with that character. So that would be a pretty uphill, I don't know the what the show would look like, what her story would look like on the show, because it wasn't going to be as the leading lady of the show. And that, I don't know, what do you guys think? Would that have been a problem? Because in the comics, even though Michonne was the top female character in the comics, the leading lady for the protagonist was Andrea in the comics. So what would that look like in the TV show? Would there be some resentment if the leading lady turned out, if she expected her character to be the leading lady and that did not happen, which was what it would not have happened, because no one in charge intended for that to happen. So what kind of, what would that look like for her character? Would there be some kind of resentment? Who knows? As an actor, you want a job, but for some actors, it matters to them. For me, if I was an actor and I'm getting a job and it's on a great show and my character isn't doing anything too diabolical, I'd be like, yay! But not everyone is like that. Some people, want certain things for their characters, and I don't know, but it would have been an interesting dilemma to see the what if, not the what if Andrea and Rick, because that was never going to be, but what if Andrea lived, what would that look like for that character? I know it would not be with Rick and Michonne would have still progressed, but what would it be for that character? And would it change the dynamics of the cast because she expected differently? I don't know. Sherry. Diane says if Andrew Lincoln was calling Denai his new leading lady in season 3, he had to have been told that was the case. Laurie Holden is just rewriting history. That's an interesting take. But just because Andrew was told that Denai would be his leading lady doesn't mean that Laurie would know, because what the showrunner would tell Andrew as the protagonist and the leading man of the show is not what he would tell a side character. It's not what the showrunner wouldn't be telling. Remember why Laurie may have had maybe saying that this is what she was told in season 1 was because the showrunner was her friend. But then we have the showrunner saying that's not what his plans were. And that he said, I read that something else was said, but he said that's not the case. So showrunners aren't going around telling side characters that this is what's going to be, this is what I have planned ahead of time. No, that's why I said Andrew as the leading man. I said those privileges are given to huge stars, big stars, leading men and leading ladies, like a Denzel Washington, like a Leonardo DiCaprio. Like they would discuss the stuff with their actor, but it's not the it that's not done for an on television series. That's not done for the main cast. It's done for like a big star or the lead of the show, like a show where everything is on a specific character shoulder, an actor's shoulder, like how The Walking Dead was on Andrew's shoulder. Yeah, I can see him and Scott Gimple talking. I can see him and Glenn Mazzara talking, about what their vision is, and even Frank Darabont, what their vision is for Rick. Maybe not, just, I would more see them talking and tell, or when they're casting Michonne, saying, this may be, I think we're going to pair you with Michonne. It's possible. It's possible because Andy said to deny she was his leading lady. So I would not be shocked if he was told that by the showrunner. But I don't see the showrunner telling other cast members that Michonne will be Rick's love interest. Danai didn't even know that. She has no, because she was going by the comics. She read the comics. And she said when she got the letter, she was like, leading lady? I thought I was just the chick with a sword, because in the comics, Robert Kirkman kept them as really, really intimate friends, but friends. So she didn't know. And the only time she was told that, she said she sensed it, and she even asked because as a writer, she saw the organic movement of these characters moving together in that direction. Right? Remember, I tell you that in the comics, they were headed in that direction too. And a good writer would go with the characters. So the fact that he pivoted and then did this out of left field thing with Andrea and Rick, I'm telling you, that was forced because the organic coming together in the comics was for Rick and Michonne. And Danai, as a writer, saw that organic coming together in the show. And she asked Scott Gimple about it. She asked him in the episode Clear. She's like, wait, what's going on? Are these two, And he was like, he wouldn't, fess up to her what he was doing. But she saw it as a writer, the organic thing would be for them, for these two characters to get together. They were already, Rick was already playing his attraction to her, and because she wasn't playing her attraction to him, obviously, because she was in trauma. She was blocked off through trauma. But from that episode, she saw Michonne flirting back with Rick. So she was like, what's going on here? And she went to the showrunner. She went, no, he wasn't the showrunner yet. She went to the writer of the episode, the writer of the episode who became the showrunner. So she went to him and was like, what's going on here? As a writer, I see the organic coming together of these characters. And he was like, really? Mm-hmm. He zipped his mouth. But that's what he intended. And Robert Kirkman even said he saw that too and discussed it with Gimple. So he didn't tell, Gimple didn't tell Danai. So Danai was in the dark. So he would not have told other actors. He would not have told Andrea that Michonne was intended for. He wouldn't have told Laurie that Michonne was intended for Rick. He didn't even tell Michonne she was intended for Rick. So if Andy came up, it's possible Andy came up with that himself, that first Rick and Michonne meeting, that Michonne was Rick's leading lady, or he and Gimple or he and Mazzara discussed it. Who knows? But we do know that Michonne, Danai did not know. And I strongly believe if it was discussed by Mazzara, Gimple, the writers, it was not told to Andrea. It was not told to Laurie, because they don't do that. That's, yeah. For Rick's character, they would not tell another actor. They don't share those things with actors, writers, and producers. That those discussions, they just hand the script to the actors. Those discussions are only had with big stars, or the protagonists of the show. If it's not an ensemble show, and there's a star where the weight of the lady from Grey's Anatomy that used to lead Grey's Anatomy. I don't know the character name. The lady that was Grey, I think her name was Grey. But she, like a Shonda Rhimes, would probably discuss something with her. She wouldn't discuss it with the other actors. Another example, say, what's another big show? I don't know anything about shows. What's in the sense that I don't watch a lot of shows, current shows. I don't watch a lot of current shows, but say like The Punisher. They would have, the creator, the showrunner would discuss stuff with the actor that plays the Punisher. Shane, he would discuss it with him, but he wouldn't discuss it with the other characters in the show. So, yeah. Right, Sherry? Rick made his choice. Rashida said Laurie should have known that being in Hollywood, they don't stick to the book, small or big screen. I remember them doing that to North and South, the miniseries, book 1 and 2 and 3. They totally changed it. Yeah, it's an adaptation, It's rarely do you get the exact same story. I think one of the shows that they did an exact adaptation, which I loved, was Pride and Prejudice with Jennifer Eel and Colin Firth. My favorite miniseries. They did it perfectly. They stuck the story, stuck to everything, and they didn't change anything in the adaptation. So. Diane said, Denai said the crew noticed it during the Claire episode and asked her about it. Andrea wasn't in many scenes with the cast at the prison, so maybe she was out of the loop. Well, they're asking Denai, Diane, They asked deny, they don't know. So the crew is out of the loop. I've done TV shows, I've worked on TV shows. The crew doesn't know. You show up to set each day, and the crew and the crew gets the sides. It's called a sides. So whatever, say you're gonna film an episode this week, right? You and it's Monday. No, say it's Tuesday, and you worked Monday, and it's the new episode. Monday you finished up episode 1. Tuesday they're gonna start episode 2. Monday evening or Monday night before the next day, you get the script for Tuesday. And sometimes you're not given the whole script. You're just given the pages that you're gonna film on Tuesday. That's what the crew gets. The crew gets the sides. The sides are the script with the pages that they're going to film on Tuesday, that day. They get it the day before, the night before, the evening before, the night before. Depends how late they're filming. And that's it. The crew doesn't know. They don't get the script, the whole story. They get the scenes that they're going to film that day. They get the scenes the day before. So they don't know. The actors that are going to film that day get some, it depends on the show. Some actors get the script for the whole episode so that they can prepare. But that's it. They're not getting they don't get the plot for the whole season. They don't get the what's ahead. They're just given the script for the episode. And some shows and some movies don't even give them the script for the whole episode or the whole film. They give them the sides before the next day or the next few days they're gonna, and that's it. They just get the sides of what their scenes entail. Some of them don't get the whole script. So the crew doesn't know. The crew never gets the whole script. The crew that gets the whole episode are the wardrobe people, because they have to plan ahead, and they have to plan ahead for the episode. So they get the wardrobe, the wardrobe, the stylist, and the set designer, and the set, the set, because they have to prepare ahead. The ones that build the sets, they're not given the scenes and the dialogues and everything. They're given, what the art director tells them what to build, so the crew prepares for the day ahead, and they don't know. So the crew, when they saw what they read it for that day, and they're like, oh, what's gonna happen? Ooh, wow. And then they watch it while they're filming, and when they finish filming, that's what happened. They ran up to Danae and asked her, what is going on? Are they getting together? So it's like our Michonne and Rick, and this is season 3 at the prison, so no, the writers would not tell them. The showrunner would not tell them. The only person the showrunner would tell would be Rick and Michonne. And he didn't tell Michonne. Michonne didn't know. She asked. The crew asked, and she asked. We don't know if he told Andy. But Andy told Michonne day 1, she's his leading lady. So, but I would not be surprised if Andy was told. But all we know is that Andy told me Danae that he's for him, she's his leading lady, and he kept saying it on every interview and implying that Rick should get with Michonne, and he wanted Rick to get with Michonne. And he didn't let up until it happened. And the only time Michonne, Denai figured it out, well, Denai wondered if it was going to happen in after the episode clear, because of, as a writer, she saw what Gimple was doing. But in season 6, before the season started, remember I tell you, when the actor is important, when the actor is a star, or it involves their character, then the showrunner or the writer or the director, it depends on if it's a movie or a TV show, would tell the star that this was the intended. Well, for movies, different, because most movies, the actor gets the whole script. But for, well, not all the actors, the day players, the ones that only have a few scenes, they don't get the whole script. They just get their scenes. That's the sides they get. But the stars, the star of, if the protagonist or his, they get the whole script. But the beginning of season 6, Gimple told Denai that Rick and Michonne would be getting together in season 6. So because one, Michonne, Denai was a big star by season 6. 2, because she was already she was a big star. She was a star in season 6. And so he told her before season 6 started, Rick and Michonne would become a couple. So, and if he told her, why wouldn't he have told Andy? so yeah, but I don't know, because when Andy and Denai were discussing it on their reminiscing, what would you call that, preview for The Ones Who Live, he acted as if he didn't know anything, but he knew. He knew. I don't know officially when they told him, if they told him in season 3 or they told him in season 6, but at the beginning of season 6. But by not before season 5, but he geared up when he was like full throttle on the, come on, this is not making any sense, let's get Rick and Michonne together. He was becoming impatient. Yeah, he was becoming impatient. I think he felt they were delaying it too long. Rashida said, the only show I've seen that was Outlander. The producer kept close to the book's dialogue. Cam J, when did you get here? Hi. Oh, you're only here for 2 minutes. Okay, I'm gonna miss you. Well, thank you for coming in and saying hi. Yay, Cam J. Yeah, so we don't know if when Andy, that would be a good question to ask him on a panel. When did he know officially that Michonne would be Rick's leading lady, since he told Denai from the very beginning she was his leading lady? When did the show officially tell you, Andy? That would be a great question for Andrew Lincoln. So yeah, we didn't go over any episode, Cam J. We were just discussing because of all the chatter. Okay, so this is another thing that went on recently. Scott Gimple gave an interview. I put that video up on my Patreon. He gave an interview to Brandon Davis, and he discussed The Ones Who Live. And one of the things he said, that The Ones Who Live nearly killed him. It was a very hard show to produce because they had a lot of limitations. One of the limitations that occurred was the strike, and that the strike, really crippled Hollywood for quite a while, and it still have there's after effects of it. Um, Nothing has been the same. The work just died, and it never came back fully. So he said the strike happened right before they shot episode 6. So they had to wrap it up. He said he wanted to do 3 to 4 more episodes. So we got 6 episodes, and he wanted to tell more story in The Ones Who Live. So if it was 3 to 4 more episodes, we would have gotten a 9 to 10 episode mini series. And one of the things he wanted to do, he wanted to flesh out more Major Beale, the leader of the rogue faction of the CRM. So he said, Brandon Davis said he loved the show, but he wanted more. He thought the ending was rushed, and Scott Gimple agreed with him. He said, yes, it was rushed because we had to wrap it up because there was a strike, right? And they couldn't produce it. I do know with the strike, they had to have new rules of production, especially for SAG-AFTRA. You had to have a specific things for the writer's room. It was a lot of bylaws, new laws that for the interim, for productions that were already in process to finish up their production, and for those that already went through pre-production and were in the ready to produce, because if they shut down that production, millions and millions of dollars are lost. And so they did give, SAG-AFTRA did give some leeway to productions that were already in productions and productions that had already completed pre-production process and were the wheels were already started on the production. They gave them leeway, but still the productions had to go by the new bylaws of what the strikers, that's what SAG-AFTRA was requesting in the strikes. So they could not, they had to do things, they had to rework the writer's room. They had to do so much, and it was going to cost more. So whatever budget they had, they did plan out the production for 6 episodes, but I don't know if while they were producing it, they saw that they could do more, but he said he wanted to do more. So I just have to go by what he said. He wanted to flesh out it even more, but one, the constraints of the strike, and two, the constraints of the budget, the money that they were allotted by AMC. So he said they just had to wrap it up. One of the stipulations of the strike is that none of the SAG-AFTRA, actually none of the writers could be on set and couldn't change anything in the script, because it wasn't just SAG. We had the writers, we had the WGA strike. It was a lot. It was the DGA struck, but the producers, the PGA struck, but they and the DGA, I think they resolved theirs fast. But the WGA and the SAG after strike, and then after the SAG after strike, it was IETSE. It was a lot. I do remember, if I'm not completely clear, so I may get this wrong, but what I sort of remember vaguely around that time, the WGA strike, the writers could not change anything on the script. So they had to produce what was already written. And remember, when you're in the middle of production, writers are on set. Writers usually go to Video Village and they sit there. You have in Video Village, you usually have the director, the script supervisor, the DP. Well, the DP's all over, but usually some of the DPs sit and watch the monitor and then tell their guys what to do. But so you have the director, the script supervisor, the DP, and then sometimes you have some producers and you have the writers. And what they're doing, they're sitting in this tent called Video Village, and they're surrounded by screens. And the screens are the different cameras that are being operated. And what they're doing, the assistant director, you have the first AD, the second AD, well, the second is usually on set, but the second AD is usually at in the production trailer, doing all the business and everything, organizing everybody and whatever. But the first AD is giving out the instructions from the director. So the director is watching the screen, and say Danae and Andy are doing their dialogue, and he's like, the director's like, I don't like how that's sounding. The writer, he calls the writer. He said, come here. And he said, what do you think? And the writer said, yeah, I think we should change that line. So the script supervisor says, what's the new line? The writer tells the line, shows it to the director. The director said to the first AD, call Andy and Danae over. They come over, they all huddle, and they say, what do you think? And, they say, yeah, this sounds better. It's like, what do you think, Andy? Andy, what do you? And there's like, yeah, this sounds better. And then they said, all right, that's the line. And the script supervisor changes the line on the script. And then the actors go and do it. The director tells the first AD, all right, go ahead. And the first AD is like, rolling. That means everybody, everything is shut down and everybody's quiet. The crew stop taking up hoses and everything, and everybody gets really quiet on the set so the actors can concentrate. And then the director says, action. And Danae and Andy do their stuff, right? And say Danae says the old dialogue, and then the director say, cut. No, remember, that's the word. And she's like, oh yeah, so yeah, that's the word, I forgot. Yeah, we changed it to that. And then they do it until they get it right. That could not happen because of the strike. They could not change one word on a script. Danae couldn't ad-lib. Andy couldn't ad-lib a word. Instead of saying, darn it. Suppose the writer says, or Andy said, that doesn't sound right. Rick wouldn't say, darn it. Rick would say, shit, right? And, but he couldn't do that. The writer's strike, Scott Gimple could not be on set. The writer of the episode could not be on set. The screen supervisor has to make sure that they say exactly what was on their script. So the frustration, I get what Gimple is saying, that if they could change anything, to even, he couldn't even suggest, say to AMC, this is going well. They would have had the other episodes in the bag. This is going fantastic. This show is going to be on fire. Let's do more. We thought, yes, 6 episodes, but we can do more. We can flesh this out. We can make it, make this so epic, the fans will be banging down your doors for more. And AMC would be like, really? Yeah. It's like, yeah, you would make so much money. But they couldn't do it because of the strike. They were so limited. So if something wasn't sounding right, if something wasn't going right, they couldn't change it. And, so it was really interesting to hear him saying that they couldn't because of the strike, and they were so limited. He said it was so hard, it was so difficult. The Ones Who Live was harder than doing The Walking Dead. So it was just fascinating. And he said we all knew that it was rushed. But he's so proud of it. And I was like, dang, if that's what they got with so much limitations, that is amazing. That was, that's why Denai said it was hard. And Andrew said it was hard. He would never do it again. And now I understand why he said that. It was so producing. He wouldn't do it again because it was so, they were up against a lot of challenges. But as Denai told him, please, yeah, you will produce again. And he did go on to produce again. They're bit by the bug. It's pretty heady to have all that, control, to go back to just getting scripts and just do what you're told, versus as artists to have that creative input. Yeah, it's hard to go back to that, to not having any input again and just reading lines what a writer writes for you. And Andy was all in on The Ones Who Live, as Denise Huff said. He was in the writer's room almost every day. So when people are like, Denai made Andy do that, Andy wouldn't want to have it like that, or it's just Scott Gimple and Denai Guerrera. Andy didn't want to do. I'm like, what? Denise Hutt said he was in the writer's room. He was all over. His DNA is all over The Ones Who Live. People love to project their feelings and their sentiments onto other people. It's just like, no, just because you think that way, and just because you want something different or think a different way, that's not how another person thinks. You cannot project your feelings, your opinions onto another person. You have to listen to what the person is saying, and more importantly, what the person is doing. Andy was all over The Ones Who Live. He was in the writer's room. He was in the editing bay. He was all over this puppy. So, oh, night, Diane. Thank you so much. We're gonna wrap up now, and yeah, and just to say that Scott Gimple did the interview, and there was another panel which I saw someone discussing, I didn't see the panel because they're gearing up for interviews with, they're gearing up for Dead City, new season of Dead City. So Lauren and the guy that played Negan, I can never remember his name, Jeffrey Morgan, have been doing interviews, and they said that one interesting fact came out, that there was a lot of plans for The Walking Dead to continue. We all know that AMC canceled it after Denai left. They were going to continue, but AMC said wrap it up, because the plan was for Negan and Maggie to continue in the mothership show, in the main show, The Walking Dead, to let it continue. And I think Daryl, Norman, and Melissa were supposed to go off. Yes, good night, Diane. Sweet dreams. Love you. See you Sunday, God willing, if you can make it. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Love you so much. And Daryl was supposed to leave to go off with so Daryl and Carol were supposed to go on like a road trips around New Mexico, around the United States, and then I think they would come back, check into the main show. So they would have their offshoot show, come in, check into the Commonwealth or Alexandria, and go back. And then sometimes Daryl would go off to himself, so Carol would come back. So but the main show would be led by Maggie and Negan. Can you imagine that? I mean, we were getting to that space, but the ratings were bottoming out. So for that to be the plan, then it would continue for even 4 or 5 more years. Well, that's what she said in her interview. And I was like, so that was the plan that they had, and so it ended when AMC said shut it down. It morphed into the 3 separate spin-offs: Dead City, Daryl Dixon, and The Ones Who Live. Which The Ones Who Live was supposed to be. Oh yes, she said The Ones Who Live was supposed to be the movie, and I don't know. Maybe at the last. That some of the characters from the main show and the Daryl and Carol Road Show, which is really the Daryl Road Show, would somehow convene into the movie. I don't know. It was like none of that made sense to me. And I don't see how it would work in a long term, because as we said, season 11, the ratings were petering out. Rashida said, I'm sorry, that wouldn't have worked. Right? So anyway, what happened is what happened. We got the MC said shut that baby down, because the ratings were not sustainable, because they the show was expensive, paying all those characters, and production cost and everything. The ensemble was too big. And they I think thinking that only having Negan and Maggie as the big money players, and then Daryl coming in. But from what Lauren said, the 3 leads would be Maggie, Negan, and Daryl. They didn't mention Carol. She would be sometime go on Daryl's road show, but from what the person said, she stated the plans were for her and Negan to carry the main show, be the leads of the main show, and Daryl be the lead of the Daryl Carroll road show, which was mainly a Daryl road show, because Carol would come back to the show, but she wouldn't be the lead. So interesting. So there was a lot of Walking Dead news where it sort of gave us an insight behind the scenes of what some of the decision making was, and what was going on as the show was wrapping up. So pretty interesting stuff. Rashida said what they should have done was improve on Tales of the Walking Dead. They were scenes, episodes that could be expanded on. Okay. I didn't watch any of the spin-offs, Tales, Fear. I watched Fear season 1 and just gave up on that because it wasn't what I expected. And yeah, I watched The Walking Dead for Rick Grimes' story, and now Rick Grimes' family. That's my main interest in The Walking Dead. You know, because if you have so many zombie genre shows, and a zombie is a zombie, and it's the story that makes it interesting. But I have not found any that really captured me, where I'm invested in the characters. It was the only the zombie shows that or movies that had me fully invested was Rick Grimes and the Grimes family, and Train to Busan, that father-daughter duo, and the 28 Days Later, the first one. And that was it. I've never I did see World War Z, but I enjoyed it, but I was never fully invested, where I was like, gosh, I wish I could continue seeing this story. So I wasn't interested in Tales of the Walking Dead. I wasn't interested in Dead City. I wasn't interested in the Daryl Dixon show. I was not interested in Fear, other than, are they going to show the beginning of the how the apocalypse started? And they didn't really do that. Was not what the show was about, so I was out. So it's Rick Grimes' story. It's Rick Grimes' story that I'm interested in. I watched recently a reaction. I like to watch the reaction videos of people watching the early season, like season 1. um, just a few episodes. I don't watch all of them, just a few episodes. And without fail, it's the story of Rick Grimes and his family that interests people. The story of the how it's what keeps people invested. And so even some were discussing, I saw a group of guys were talking about how they love season 2, some of the episodes, because, and they're like, people are like, no, this will be boring. You're like, what? We get to see Rick's journey, what, the dilemma, his dilemma, the what's going on, if with Laurie and her betrayal, and how she's handling things, and the secret she's keeping, and how that affects Rick. They are, and he said, oh, some people, one of the guys, and these are young guys, one of the guys said, oh, they're just people that want to see action and zombies. They don't care about the story. They're not intelligent enough to care about the story. And I was like, there you go. There you go. And so, yeah, The Walking Dead is Rick Grimes' story. And that's what keeps me interested. So trying to have all these spin-offs and universes and whatever, if it's not about Rick Grimes and his story, his family, which is a part of his story, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. It will be middling. When I say middling, not that the storytelling would be bad, but it's not going to capture the general audience. And as a filmmaker, as a producer, you need the general audience. You need you can't just, it would be very niche if you're just going by diehard fans. You need people who are interested on a in that can, people that will, that are not like super fans of the franchise. You need their eyes on it for it to be successful, or you're just going to have a little niche project, and you cannot spend a lot of money on a niche project because you will lose money. And if you're not going to spend a lot of money, you're not going to get a really good product. And when I said a lot of money for a decent production, so yeah, without Rick Grimes, that's why they're talking, they're talking about this reunion. They want that reunion. You know why? Because they want Rick Grimes back, because they know you're not going to get a wide audience if you just have a Negan, a Maggie, a Daryl, a Carol. You're not going to have a wide general audience because the interest is Rick and his story. Sherry said, I'm not interested in a Maggie, Negan, or Daryl storyline. Exactly. Disney has a zombie TV show for kids. That's weird. Rashida said World War Z was nothing like the book. Even the author said he enjoyed the movie because it was nothing like his book. There was a book. I didn't even know there was a book. Sherry says, true that. Rick Grimes' family development. Yes, I will watch that, but no killing of the Grimes family. If the Grimes, if Rick dies, and I hope no more of his family dies, but if Rick dies, it's over. I know they would have to wait a few more years and do a complete reboot, like start from scratch with a new Rick Grimes. If they kill Rick Grimes, it's over. And even people, if they find out that Rick Grimes dies in the end, they will not want to follow his journey, because the new reboot, people are like, oh, there was a Walking Dead before. You got to check it out. But it ended stupid because Rick Grimes died. People aren't going to want to start the story again. So Rashida says, I watched Daryl Dixon and Dead City because it's the summer entertainment. Okay. Well, you're a fan of the franchise, Rashida, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's why I said there are fans of the franchise. That's why you have people who love Daryl Dixon and will watch him in a spin-off, and they love Negan and they will watch him in a spin-off, and they love Maggie and they love Carol. So those are fans of the franchise. They love the all the the side characters, and they want to see those characters. But that's niche. And that's why even fans of those side characters want a reunion with Rick, because they realize to get bigger numbers, they need Rick Grimes. It's not, you cannot, it becomes niche without Rick. For it to be a mainstream, successful project, enough to invest a decent amount of production value, money, you need Rick Grimes. So, anyway, I wanted to discuss those stories with you because those were the interesting new information that came out about the show recently. And I just wanted to discuss that with you. So we can, hopefully next week we'll continue season 8. I'll react to that. But yeah, I just wanted to discuss all of that. Sure. So you're going to watch the new Spider-Man movie? Oh my gosh. Tom and Zendaya are just two little love bugs on their promo. It's so nice to see as a young couple so loving with each other, and so respectful and in love. It's very cute. I've been seeing them on social media during this press tour for the Spider-Man movie. I didn't see the third one. I need to see the third one. So before I see this one. And I can't wait to get to the ones who live. I really want to react to that. So it's like, oh, it's taking too long to get to it. I may hurry up the season 8. We were trying to do all of season 8, but I don't know, guys. It's taking too long to get to the ones who live. Sherry and Rashida, am I gonna see you on Sunday? Are we gonna meet Sunday? Or is it what happens? Hold on. When is the 4th of July? So Sunday's the 28th. So the 4th is next week, Saturday. Oh, okay. So we have time. So will we be meeting Sunday, or you guys are busy? Let me know, because, it's up to your schedules. 5 o'clock. I didn't do any readings. I have so much to do, guys. You're up for it, Sherry? Okay. Oh my gosh, Sherry, Rashida is at chapter 10. So you can go ahead to chapter 10. Sunday at 5. Okay. So I'll see you lovely ladies then. Thank you so much for hanging out with me again. And we will talk soon. I have some great video ideas, guys. As you know, I'm still doing the Rick and Michonne, but I have some great video ideas that I can't wait to post on Patreon for Rick and Michonne. Ooh, can't wait. All right, guys. So I'll see you Sunday at 5. And hopefully I can get some more videos up. It's the editing that slows me down. But hopefully I can get some more videos up soon for Rick and Michonne. And we'll continue season 8 reactions. And I'll see you Oh, Friday is. Did I say Friday or Saturday is the 4th? Will you guys be available to do Friday, or is everybody gonna be away for the holidays? Because if you guys want to take a break this next week Friday, we can take a break. Let me know. Bye, Sherry. Bye, Rashida. Take care. Bye, everyone. Have a good weekend and a good week ahead. You'll be here Friday, Rashida? Okay. Okay. Bye, everyone.